Doctor in the TARDIS. Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm your host, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, ready to talk some classic Doctor Who with a new special guest companion here on Next Stop Everywhere. Welcome, everybody, to Next Stop Everywhere, Rachel Frend from the Five-ish Fangirls Podcast. Welcome, Rachel, to Next Stop Everywhere.
Hello.
Hello.
You've got another of the five-ish.
Exactly. We are now two fifth-ish.
Yes.
So yeah, we've got two of the Five-ish Fangirls, and to quote the first Doctor in the Three Doctors, I wonder what happened to the others. So, but very cool. So before we get started, do we have Holly to thank, or do you want to blame her for recommending this podcast? Hopefully thank, but I would understand otherwise.
I blame Holly for giving me another podcast to listen to.
Oh,
because I don't need any more.
Sure you do. You need
there's
this
not
one.
enough hours in the day.
You need our podcast. Any kind of voluntary is right out. It's purely mandatory. I'm just kidding.
But I do have to thank Holly, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and in this case, talk about my favorite Doctor.
Excellent. Yeah. So here at episode 157, everyone, we're going to talk Vengeance on Varos. And this was the second serial of season 22 in 1985, written by Philip Martin, who also wrote the season 23 story, Mind Warp, the second serial in the Trial of a Time Lord. And, of course, starring Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor and Nicola Bryant as Perpigillium Peri Brown, one of my favorite pairings from the 80s. And even given how the Sixth Doctor was written in a lot of episodes, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But this is a pretty decent story. It's pretty much how I remembered it. I've been watching it over and over throughout the decades, showing my age. But I still enjoy this one a lot, and it's actually pretty relevant to today, I think.
Yes.
And that's one of the things we'll talk about, I'm sure. But Rachel, I want to get a little bit of a background from you, a little bit, if you don't mind. I kind of would like to know, since you're kind of new to the podcast, this podcast at least, what's your background with Doctor Who, and is Colin Baker your favorite Doctor? Is the Sixth Doctor your favorite?
Yes. So I got on the Who bandwagon in mid-ish 2012, so it has not been that long. I was mostly me seeing friends post on Facebook about this show, and at the time it was during Matt Smith's run with Amy and Roy as his companions, and after a while I'm like, I've got to see what this thing is that my friends are watching. So I jumped in with the Ninth Doctor with Rose, and after some time, burned through everything available via Netflix.
Yes.
Which at the time was a decent amount. They had all of current Who at the time up to a certain point, and I had to supplement that with the DVDs, as back when Netflix still sent you DVDs.
Right.
And the wait list for New Who would be quite long for those discs. And then whatever classic Who they had, which was a weird mix because they had like one story or a couple of stories for the first, second, and third Doctors. They had a crap ton of fourth Doctor, including all of the Key to Time.
Right.
Some handful fifth Doctor, no sixth Doctor, and some seventh Doctor. And that's what Netflix had at the time.
Right.
So I had to use
pretty much what they had on iTunes at the time.
Yeah. So I just had to use the power of the internet to try and fill in those gaps. And eventually, I don't know at what point, but eventually I've reached a point where I've seen everything at least once.
Excellent.
Yeah, whether it's reconstructions or telesnaps or omnibuses, whatever's available, especially for those ones where a lot of them are missing. It's quite fun to fill in that, try to fill in those stories when all you get are, a screenshot essentially with maybe a closed caption scrolling across the bottoms, like
right.
The Doctor stands up and walks out the door, So, but yeah, once I got in and got bit by the bug, I just was totally in like Flynn and have not looked back since.
Excellent. As obviously we can tell by the name of your podcast, the Five-ish Fangirls Podcast.
Yes.
Which obviously a nod to the Five-ish Doctors. Yes. Yeah. The special by Peter Davison.
Yeah.
Now Peter Davison's my doctor. So the way I approach it is that Colin was Peter was my first full doctor. Mm-hmm. Because I kind of jumped on at the tail end of Tom Baker's run with the Keeper of Traken. And so I watched all the Peters, and then when Colin came on, that was obviously a very stark contrast when I finally got to see his episodes on PBS back in the day. So what is it that you find so appealing about the Sixth Doctor? Because I don't get a lot of Sixth Doctor fans.
Yeah, and I get very, very strange looks from people when they ask me who my favorite Doctor is, and I tell them the Sixth Doctor. You get that look of what drugs are you on? People talk about the Sixth Doctor's era even after I had listened and watched some people's reviews actually of this episode after rewatching it myself, just to see kind of what the general vibe out there was. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, for the Sixth Doctor's run, this is actually a pretty decent story, but that's not saying a whole lot. is what they tack on there.
So they have to do that backhanded compliment. Right?
Yes, exactly. So I honestly think that there's just a part of me that likes flawed characters that don't, there's people really, no offense to the people out there that may be their favorite, but like characters like Captain America and Superman, where they are just shiny clean, and they still have their issues because they still have the ability to make bad decisions, but that clean cut apple pie type of hero, quote unquote hero, is just not my cup of tea. I like my characters a little angry, a little broken, a little, snobbish, maybe a little egotistical. So the Sixth Doctor fits right in there with Iron Man, who's my favorite superhero. So
right, because he is egocentric, and arrogant and all the above there. Yeah. So. Yeah. I get your perspective. So you probably hate my doctor, the Fifth Doctor, who was so nice.
I don't hate any of them. That's the thing. It's like I like all of them for different reasons, but if I'm going to sit down and watch some Who just for the heck of it,
Right.
odds are I'm probably going to either go for the Sixth Doctor or the 12th Doctor, because Capaldi's Doctor shares a lot of personality traits with the Sixth Doctor.
Yes, he does, especially in his the first half of his run, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, all right, you totally sold me. I love the fact that you got in through New Who and liked it so much you wanted to learn more, so you went back to the classic era. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you have my respect.
Yeah. Well, and I enjoyed watching the early stuff, and even the stuff, going up until when the show went off the air. People like to poke fun at the rubber suits and the wobble.
The wobbly
TARDIS.
sets. Yeah.
But I grew up in a household, my dad's a Star Trek fan, so I remember watching the original Star Trek series. So seeing TV shows with sets made out of cardboard, that did not bother me whatsoever, because to me that was the norm. I completely understand that at the time that's what they were capable of.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of there's a lot of 60s Star Trek that hasn't aged very well.
Yeah.
Even with a little CGI tweaking of the special effects. So yeah, and obviously Doctor Who's no different, with a much lesser budget, especially in the late 80s. So yeah, definitely. All right. So just to give a little background, we kind of talked about the main cast a little bit. Obviously the leads. Guest cast this time I want to talk about Nabil Shaban, who plays Syl. This is his first story. Basically like the embodiment of an internet troll, and we'll talk about Syl here in a minute. But if you kind of visualize an internet troll in your head, that's probably Syl. But he turns up obviously later in season 23 in Mind Warp. He reprised Syl for the Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio Mission to Magnus, which was a reconstructed audio adventure that was based off of a unused screenplay for the original season 23 that was replaced by the Trial of a Time Lord season. And then he returned also for another Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio, Antidote to Oblivion. So do you listen to any of the Sixth Doctor Big Finish audios? Because a lot of people, including myself, seem to feel that Big Finish went a long way to redeeming Colin's Doctor.
Oh yeah. My first Big Finish was Sixth Doctor. When I started listening to Big Finish, I jumped right in with, I believe the first I ever listened to was the Marian Conspiracy.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So with the Sixth Doctor and Evelyn jumping right in.
That was a great pairing, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that, let's see, what else? Oh, and a little bit of trivia. Nabil Shaban was also in the movie Children of Men, starring Clive Owen, if you're familiar at all with that movie.
I'm familiar with it. I've not seen it, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I watched it once with my wife, Lori, and I thought it was a pretty decent movie. Martin Jarvis, who plays the governor, was previously in the story The Web Planet in the William Hartnell era, and he also played the character Helio in that story. And then he turned up in a John Pertwee era story as a butler in Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Then he turns up all the way, in the Big Finish era, where he played a character named Nigel Rochester in the Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio Jubilee, which is one of my favorite Big Finish audios. Another Sixth Doctor, obviously, story with Evelyn, if I'm not mistaken. And he was also in the movie Titanic, believe it or not, the 1997 one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. Let's see what else. Jason Connery as Jandar in this story. Obviously, if you know anything about Jason Connery, you know that he's the son of
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, yes.
Yes.
The original James Bond film franchise, Bond. And he also has appeared in episodes of Smallville and the movie Shanghai Noon. A little bit of trivia there. Sheila Reed, who plays Etta, turned up later, much later, in the 11th Doctor era as
Clara's grandmother.
exactly as Clara's gran in Time of the Doctor and Dark Water.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of good stories there, and also in the Peter Capaldi era, I should say.
Yeah.
She was also a character named Janaya in another Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio, but I'm sensing a trend here, called The Middle. And she's in the movie Brazil by Terry Gilliam, if you've ever seen that movie, which is a very trippy movie.
Yeah. We like to joke that in the UK that there's like 12 actors and one rock quarry that they all use. So, because everybody's been in everything.
Yeah, they kind of recycle, don't they?
Yes.
All you have to do is just kind of change the names of the characters, and it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
There's like maybe like a dozen or so of them sitting around a bar somewhere, a pub somewhere, and they just like, okay, you, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Stephen Yardley, who plays Eric, was a character named Severin in the Tom Baker classic Genesis of the Daleks. And Owen Teale, who plays Maldak, was a character named Evan Sherman in the Torchwood episode Countryside.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays a character named Hayton in a Big Finish audio adventure, The Mind's Eye. But a lot of HBO fans may recognize him as Alistair Thorne on the HBO series Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
So which is very trippy, because if you know that character and then you see him here as this guard and see him much, much younger, obviously, you're like, oh my God, that guy ends up in Game of Thrones. Pretty trippy.
Yeah.
At least that's what, when I saw him, I was just like, wow, okay. A little bit of trivia before we get started. You may or may not know, this story was actually a season 22 replacement for a serial called Song of the Space Whale by a comics writer named Pat Mills. And this story was also the first one written for season 19, Peter Davison's first season, but was repeatedly pushed back and rewritten. And in the final draft, the story had a number of comedic sequences, most of which wound up being cut. And the acid bath sequence was obviously played seriously in this version. And the result was that the final story was much darker than originally intended. So probably a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, or the satire was more obvious, I think. Yeah. And of course, that acid bath sequence was highly criticized, especially by Mary Whitehouse back in the day, because of its tone and because the Sixth Doctor dares to make like a James Bond-like quip after the two workers end up getting dunked in the acid bath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like James Bond's allowed to do it because he's cool.
Right, exactly.
He's slick in his tuxedos, but you get the guy in the multicolored coat makes a comment and heaven forbid.
Well, the idea was that, of course, that Doctor Who was, they viewed Doctor Who as a children's show back then.
Yeah.
Even though it's more of a family show. But yeah, it's just obviously a slight overreaction that all of us here in 2019 kind of look back and go like, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so let's get into our main discussion. Let's talk about, got 3 topics today. First topic I want to talk right off the bat about the Sixth Doctor and Peri. And we might as well go ahead and throw in Jandar and Arita, his wife, in this segment. So obviously, being a big Sixth Doctor fan, I got to ask right off the bat, what was your take on the Sixth Doctor in this story?
This one's interesting because of once they get to Varos, he's very Sixth Doctor. The bit before that, when the TARDIS, kind of breaks down,
right,
and stops working, and the Doctor suddenly becomes extremely depressed and just doesn't seem to. Yeah, he just gives up, which is very unusual for the Doctor in general, let alone this incarnation. And I think that's one of those things where I think that's part of where the script suffered from all of the rewrites, and the fact that it was intended for the previous Doctor, and then got pushed back and then rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. And I don't think they realized how different personality wise this incarnation was going to be, and how harsh this Doctor was going to be. I think if they'd known that, I think his approach to the TARDIS breaking down probably would have been different. Probably him taking a rubber mallet to it and be like, work! Kind of like later incarnations like to do.
Right.
But yeah, just to see him just kind of plop down in a chair and be like,
and sulk.
Yeah, I'd be like, well, Peri, you're fine. You're going to grow old and die. I'm just going to keep on regenerating. Like, get off your butt, Doctor, and do something. And Peri finally has to be the one to take charge and find the TARDIS manual, because at this point he's not thrown it into a supernova.
No, he was like propping up something.
Propping up an event.
Vent, yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's what that one of the things, and it seems so exemplary of what I view is that the writers just didn't have a handle on the Sixth Doctor in this season. And I kind of chalk that up to Eric Saward, the script editor, a lot of that. And there was just so much antagonism in the TARDIS between the Sixth Doctor and Peri. Just they're just being so horrible to each other, both of them.
Yeah.
And just it makes it so unpleasant to watch. And if you've watched any of the deleted scenes of the TARDIS sequences, it gets even worse if you watch those deleted scenes. And so a lot of that, I was just very thankful that they cut, because it made them appear so unpleasant. And you're like, why are these two traveling together?
Yeah.
It just seems...
You have to wonder why Peri keeps traveling.
Right.
with him
right.
After everything that's happened.
Yeah, so. I mean, the Sixth Doctor was introduced to Peri by strangling her.
Yeah.
And fortunately, he quit that.
Yes.
But there's just this antagonism, and a lot. Often Peri tends to whine, or at least that's how she's written.
Yes.
When written poorly.
And Nicola Bryant, bless her, she is. I've met her, and she's a complete sweetheart.
Yeah.
In real life, but Peri is definitely one of my least favorite companions, at least as far as the TV series is concerned. And Big Finish, again, it's a little different because they get a chance to flesh her out. But as far as the Peri and the Sixth Doctor on TV, Peri is she's useless, is the only way I can describe her. She doesn't seem to pay attention to what's going on, constantly asking the Doctor's questions. I'm like, Peri, if you just pay attention for 2 seconds, you know exactly what's going on.
Well, I think a lot of it is also because you had these male writers who didn't know how to write women, or they viewed Peri as the assistant, who couldn't contribute to the story, really.
Yeah,
that's how they viewed her anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that may be the case, and you would probably know better than I would off the top of your head if the writers did we get different writers later in the Sixth Doctor's run, because when we get Peri leaves and we get Mel's different. Mel is, she's still kind of a screaming she can scream with the best of them, but she's definitely not as helpless and clueless as Peri is written.
Yeah, and there was a lot of it was Robert Holmes helping out with a lot of the Trial of the Time Lord.
Yeah,
but because Saward left with season 22.
Okay,
and then when Robert Holmes died in the middle of writing season 23, Pip and Jane Baker took over.
Yeah.
So you had
which I love Pip and Jane Baker.
Right. So you had actually a female writer. So you probably that probably helped in the fact that at least giving Mel something to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, here in this story, Peri doesn't get to do much. She basically gets captured, brought to meet Syl. Hooray for her that. And ends up being shuffled off with Rita later to be transmogrified. And that's basically her big contribution in the story.
Yeah, other than, getting the TARDIS manual at the beginning.
This is true. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Apparently pulling the TARDIS manual out and actually putting it in front of the Doctor's face and going, hey, look, we're stuck. Maybe you ought to look at this thing.
Yeah.
And of course the Doctor's like, well, might as well, since I have eternity to kill.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure she's thinking, well, great, don't do me any favors. But yeah, it's just, again, she's just so horribly underwritten in this story.
Yeah.
Now Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor, obviously he gets to do much more than Peri.
Oh, yes.
He's right in the middle of it. He's right there. He gets paired with John Dar. I guess that was the other thing Peri does. She does help the Sixth Doctor free John Dar.
Yeah.
When he's all chained up and shirtless for the ladies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess
Takes after his father.
Yeah, it's rare that you get that little bit of male beefcake for back in the 80s, I guess. Yeah, so they free John Dar, and they're kind of running around this this maze essentially,
Mm-hmm.
or just all these tunnels that are essentially booby traps, and so the Sixth Doctor kind of steps into the forward, and ultimately, yeah, he's the one that kind of figures out a lot of what they experience are illusions and intentional death traps and whatnot. So he obviously helps them avoid. But ultimately, he succumbs to one enough that he gets captured, and then that's where he kind of gets brought and ultimately learns what's going on.
Yeah.
So did you see him as the Doctor? Were you a little surprised at how he was showing some violence in the story, a little bit by like brandishing a gun, being very callous to the men who died in the acid bath, or were you just like did you feel that was consistent with his Doctor?
I mean, to me, with this particular incarnation of the Doctor, yeah, it kind of fell in line with who this particular Doctor is. Again, to kind of, the irony of it, kind of comparing him to James Bond, because we've got the son of a Bond, the Bond,
right,
in this episode. But the Doctor has never been completely non-violent, is the thing. I mean, we saw the third Doctor was very James Bondish, actually, with his
yes.
because he was earthbound.
Right.
He had to rely on the gadgets and things like Bessie and stuff, and his own
Venusian Aikido,
wits,
yeah,
and the Venusian Aikido, which is kind of a James Bond thing. So it's not that the Doctor is completely passive as a character. It's just not the first choice. But when push comes to shove, and probably the idea is the greater good, if I've got to give violence with one person to save others, then I'll throw a punch.
So you feel, yeah, he's not above doing it.
Yeah,
so
he's not above doing it, and the whole acid bath thing. I'm sure at the time was partially a product of the fact that you were seeing it on TV and not that high of quality. You had no way of pausing or rewinding or rewatching something. So at the time, people probably missed the fact that the one guy falls in because he gets surprised that the Doctor's alive.
Right.
And then the second guy goes in because the first guy pulls him in. He grabs his pant leg. But that's something that people probably just did not notice.
Yeah, the Doctor just essentially
on TVs.
He tries to hold him off, and then they kind of do this back and forth where they kind of swap places and whatnot. Like, oh, the Doctor looks like, oh, he's going to fall into the acid bath, and then they switch around, and Yeah, it's not that the doctor forces him in. He's just holding him off.
Yeah.
With that screen or whatever that was.
Yeah.
And it was the other guy that just yanked him in.
Yeah.
But and there's obviously nothing the doctor could do at that point. So
Yeah.
now one thing I did notice later when Peri and Arita are going through that transmogrification process, the doctor kind of takes his time in resolving that. You know, when he's trying to convince everybody to shut it off, he kind of doesn't really like. Here it is. He's told that, well, you know, it could be any minute that process is complete, but he still kind of takes his time. And until before finally, ultimately, he decides, okay, he gets hold of a gun and shoots this console to end the process. And which obviously he could have done a lot sooner had he been a little more proactive about it. I just thought that was obviously I think they were trying to kill time, and fill out the episode. But to the but otherwise to the viewer it comes off more like, well, you might want to hurry this up. She could be like permanently changed if you don't do anything. So you might want to step this up a little. Yeah, just something I noticed. Obviously, the Sixth Doctor doesn't think a lot of Syl, and we'll talk about Syl here in a minute. They only get they don't get to share a lot of screen time, but it's kind of enjoyable, obviously, to see Colin Baker bantering with Syl. And anything about Jandar and Arita that you want to discuss? Because I don't want to leave them out, but Rita doesn't really do a whole lot either. Again, the women are so underwritten in this story; it's not even funny. Yeah,
we've got
Ed is the most well written.
I was going to say we've got three women. In this story, and Etta, who happens to be just kind of one half of the Greek chorus of this story, is given the most to say, and I think has the most personality.
Right.
What
did you think of the transmogrification process?
That's
the decision. Okay, well, hey, we're going to because we think so highly of women, we're just going to transform them into animals as an example to the other women.
Yeah,
it's a little skeevy and uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, and Peri is obviously turning into some sort of bird-like creature, and the other is we don't even know what she was turning into.
some kind of reptile. They said.
Yeah, something that Syl found appealing.
Yeah, he's all like, "Oh, she's hot now."
Yeah. So I know that the whole Peri turning into a bird thing there's still some debate about it, about what it possibly meant, because I know
as far as symbolism goes,
Quillam the scientist, when he's explaining, it's like, oh, this one's turning into a bird because deep down she needs to fly away from her problems or something.
And escape, yeah.
Yeah, she needs to escape, and I know that there's a novel that supposedly goes a bit more into that, and depending on who you ask, some people claim that Peri was having issues at home, either with her mother or her stepfather, again, depending on who you ask. Yeah. Nicola Bryant says that she never thought that was the case, that actually Peri liked her stepfather more than she liked her mother. But there are some writers out there that claim otherwise. Either way,
considering she played Peri, let's go with her.
Yeah. Oh, and either way, it's an interesting look and a chance for them to do something with special effects makeup. Although apparently Nicola Bryant was allergic to the glue they used for the feathers, or the feathers themselves. She was allergic to something,
right?
Because of the special effects makeup. So
it probably made her skin all raw. So hopefully she didn't. Hopefully she wasn't scarred by that. It doesn't appear to be, but
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that. I'm sure that wasn't a great process to go through back then.
Yeah.
But it's just okay. That's it's apparently this was Quillen's hobby. Apparently,
Yes.
yeah, interesting. All right.
Like,
Anything else about the Sixth Doctor Peri or Jandar or Rita before we move on? So you want to talk about?
no, no, not really. Although once again, Peri is dressed wholly inappropriately for uh, an adventure with the Doctor.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
yeah. Really low cut top, and as you can tell
And
by the
heels,
action figure, yeah,
essentially.
heels
Yeah.
and shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. Obviously, they were obviously trying to keep the dads happy with her.
Yes.
Yeah. And the teenage boys, I'm sure. All right, so let's move on to our second topic. Let's talk about Eric and Etta, who are essentially man on the street or people on the
Yeah.
street characters,
Yeah.
where they're watching all the events taking place, but obviously they're just kind of sitting in their little room, hovel, whatever you want to call it, watching the events on the screen. So they only know what's being displayed to them.
Mhm.
And periodically they get to vote on things like with the governor, whether he should, if it's a yes vote or a no vote, and if he fails the vote, that apparently can release this kind of cellular degeneration type energy that will eventually kill him.
Mhm.
And so through them we find out we kind of like that this Varos used to be, at least where they are, used to be a prison that was somehow converted, and the way the society is set up is that it's a much more cruel, heartless society, and
Their only source of income is mining Zyton 7.
exactly. And they're essentially they're kept, they're oppressed. It's a very, very restrictive and
Yeah.
controlled society, and so the way they kind of get these two point of view characters is that Eric is the one who he flaunts authority. All he wants is to be entertained. So he's very eager for the governor to die, and he's very eager to watch other people die on screen, and votes accordingly. While Etta is the complete sycophant. She's the one who completely buys into this kind of authoritarianism, and she's even ready to report on, I'm guessing, her husband. It's not really made clear.
Mhm.
And report him at any opportunity. So what did you make of these characters?
I liked the kind of the man on the street type of aspect to it, or as I referred to them, kind of the Greek chorus.
Yes.
Of this. It's interesting because you have these two characters, which in back in the day they would have been, in a stage production or something, they would have been the Greek chorus more than likely. Those characters that help fill in the story of what, give you some narration to what's going on when this whole, people fighting, or watching people fight to try not to die is also ties back to Roman times.
Yeah, the whole bread and circuses thing.
Yeah. So
you almost expect the Sixth Doctor to go, "Are you not entertained?"
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. So I like having those two, and especially because they have opposing viewpoints on their
Right.
situation. That one is, very supportive of the governor, and the other is like, no, I work, I'm in the mines, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're breaking my back, doing all this hard work, and I just want to come home and eat my rations and be entertained.
Yes.
After working hard. So if that means somebody's got to die for my entertainment, dagnabbit, then somebody's going to die. So that's it's definitely it definitely brings a different aspect to it, because a lot of times we don't necessarily in stories like these, in well, when we get to recommendations
Right.
later, that some of the more modern stuff they do make sure to show the people who are on the outside, not just the people that are participating in whatever life and death event is happening. But it is nice to see the other side of the curtain, essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
You
to
get
that.
you get these characters, you get the point of view of these characters who aren't directly involved,
Mm-hmm.
but everything that happens affects them
Yeah.
ultimately, because they get freed, and there's that bit at the end where they're like,
What
okay,
do we do now?
what do we do now? Yeah, like
Yeah.
and especially with Etta, who is completely all in
Yeah.
on this kind of oppressive regime. The regime's gone, and she's just like, "Oh, look at the time, gotta go, bye."
Yeah.
Um, so, and you had to fit. Yeah. So, did you feel it all for Eric a little bit because of him having to watch himself around Etta? Like
Yeah.
he would start to get into a little um, outburst that would criticize the regime, and Etta would be like, "Oh, tell me more,"
Hmm.
with her hand on her chin, going, "Yes, yes," and her pencil in her other hand,
Yeah.
ready to write down everything he says so she can report on him.
Yeah.
So that had to be, I'm sure, a very uncomfortable
Yeah.
to be living
Yeah.
with someone who's a complete sympathizer like that.
Yeah. And that I sympathize with Eric, and at the same time, it's somewhat uncomfortable
Yeah.
considering where we are society wise at the
Yes,
moment,
exactly.
especially the United States, but in other parts of the world too.
Yeah,
Um,
with all
yeah,
these authoritarian regimes
yeah,
clamping down on the truth and people speaking out,
yeah,
you're not like, well, can I talk about this openly, because I don't want to end up like in jail or something.
yeah.
I'd like to
It,
be. I
it
like
it
like
is.
I thought I had the freedom to express myself, but
Yeah,
you're obviously trying to clamp down on that. So yeah,
yeah. It's very uncomfortable.
it's very uncomfortable. But yeah, this story is uncomfortably relevant to what's going
Yeah.
on today. I think you bring up a great point. Um, all right. Anything else about these characters before we move on?
Nope.
All right, moving on. Third and final topic. Let's talk about our bad guys. Let's talk about Syl, the governor, who's not quite as much of a bad guy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he's just mostly bad because he's forced to be.
Yeah.
The chief officer and Quillen, who's Syl and Quillen are just horrible people,
Yeah.
or aliens, or what have you.
Yeah. Just.
Horrible, horrible people. So
Yeah.
as sociopathic as it gets.
Yeah. Okay. So,
So
Syl.
yeah, let's talk about Syl first.
Let's talk about Syl.
Yeah.
Let's get the green slug in the room out of the way. Um, Syl is one of those characters that, from what I understand, based on other people's commentary and reviews, Syl is a quite beloved baddie.
Okay.
As far as Doctor Who is concerned, and this is in no way, my opinion isn't in no way a reflection of what I think of the actor, because I think he did a wonderful job,
Right.
considering what was given to him. But I can't stand Syl, and I can't stand everything about him, from his voice to his just
He's completely unpleasant.
paranoia and
Yeah.
greed, and just every time he's on the screen, I just kind of want to be like, bleh. Kind of makes me want to gag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's probably best represented by an internet troll these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, Syl is just completely irredeemably horrible.
Yeah.
He
Which is a sign of a good villain.
Right, exactly. And Nabil Shaban,
Yeah.
to his credit, is great at being horrible. So mission accomplished, my man.
Yeah.
You did fantastic at if you wanted to make Syl unlikable, congratulations, mission accomplished. You did it. He's just he's cheering on all the violence, and he's really getting off on it, like in a really creepy way.
Yeah.
He's cheering on deaths. He's shouting at everything. It's like, dude, we're in the same room. We can hear you.
Yeah.
Just dial it back a little. But and he, and he's got that kind of vibe, almost like in the modern era of like Cassandra O'Brien, with the whole like moisturize me thing.
Water me.
Yeah, exactly. Water me. I have to look good for our impending invasion.
Yeah.
And he's got these henchmen who, if you notice, are both black guys. What's up with that?
Yeah.
And they're kind of decked out in this really like kind of sadomasochistic bondage gear.
Yeah, like they have on like, it's like black leather. It's almost like a not quite a loincloth. It's more of a full skirt, but they're not wearing a whole lot.
Right.
And they're his muscle is essentially what they are, because like it's not like he can run away.
No.
He's attached to this tank. I guess the idea was that whoever, I don't know if it was a writer, I don't know if it was Philip Martin or whoever, was like, you know what, there's not enough like amphibious bad guys on TV.
Well, we had the Silurians and the Sea Devils, and that's really about it. So Syl's probably kind of like that. And Syl's, because of the actor and his condition, Syl physically looks different, obviously, because of Nabil Shaban's stature, and also the fact that of his legs having deformities. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of like this little slug, and the way they kind of move him around is they have him on this platform, and where they can conceal like the lower portion of Nabil Shaban's body.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty effective, because if nothing else, as horrible as Syl is, at least he's unique. At least he's an original Doctor Who villain.
Yeah, he's very unique, and we've not really seen anyone like him since. And apparently, the costume was it was all just like one piece, so they essentially had to Vaseline
that had to be a fun process.
Him into it like a really tight fitting like glove.
Right.
He's like, as my lower part of my body would get in, I'd have to stick my arms into the sleeves real quick, and then I'd just be, and then he's like, I would be in there until we were done shooting. I couldn't get back out again to go to the bathroom or anything. So. And
that had to be hot and uncomfortable, and all that rubber.
Yeah.
He
probably really wanted to be watered.
Yeah. He's like, no, seriously, water me. I'm dying in this suit.
Yes.
Help me out. I'm going to pass out if you don't. But yeah, just it's a really really weird look, and again, the henchman. That's a really odd choice for a henchman. Of all the henchmen he could have, those are the henchmen he has. Now, the governor. Let's talk about the governor really quickly. The governor is a much more relatable character. He's generally looking out for his people and wants to do the best for them. He's trying to negotiate a better deal for his people with Syl and the chief officer, who he's not aware is actually working with Syl. And he ends up being put a lot of, because of certain events, he's put into a situation where he has to be voted upon by the public, and they vote for that cellular degeneration. And essentially, if he gets one more hit of that, it'll kill him.
Yeah,
that's what we're told. So he's weak. He's struggling through all of this, and he's trying desperately to keep Syl and everybody else from taking over, and that invasion force coming in and completely losing control in this situation. And when the Doctor and Peri come along, and they free Jandar and Arita, and there's this rebellion coming up, and he kind of sees this. He's obviously wanting to guide it, but he has to do it in such a way that, well, I don't, he has to play it cool, because he still wants to be able to be in control. He doesn't want to be put to death. So, what did you think of the governor playing both sides as he did?
He's a very gray area.
You said you like characters that aren't exactly all squeaky clean.
Yeah.
And I think the governor kind of falls in that category.
Yeah. Well, and I guess when the script was, earlier versions of the script, the governor was actually supposed to be more the bad guy. And then as the script evolved, he turned more into this guy, and this essentially a possible situation. He's been, I guess, not necessarily even voted into office, because when at the end, when it looks like he's going to die, him and Peri, and the guy that's watching him to make sure they don't try anything, was telling this guard that you could be in my position, because they're just going to take the names of, I guess, the top brass in the guard, and they just pick one of them. Right. To be the new governor. So it's not even like they're, someone's like actively campaigning saying, no, I want this job. Yeah. It's, you're part of a group that your name may get pulled out of a hat, and now you're put in this position that you can see is really, really, really tough.
Yes.
So yeah, he's definitely, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. As far as being the guy in charge, or at least the face that the public know as the guy in charge, because it seems like a little bit like, was it the chief officer that's two-timing with Syl?
Yeah.
Is pulling more of the strings.
They got basically, like, the chief officer has like a side hustle with Syl going on.
Yeah,
where they're kind of working against Varos's interests.
Yeah.
And so obviously, the governor is surrounded, doesn't have a single ally around him. And he's just struggling to get by with everything. And obviously drafted into that situation because he just was the poor unlucky bastard who got the short straw, I guess, one day.
Yeah.
All right. Quillen, let's talk about him really quickly. Quillen is the scientist behind the whole transmogrification process. Mm-hmm. And even he admits he has no idea how this thing works. It just so happened that, like, they were using this on the miners, and the miners grew claws one day. And apparently, for whatever reason, he thought, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea to experiment on myself? So he ends up scarring himself.
Yeah.
So obviously that turned out really well. Great plan there. So he's forced to wear a mask that the doctor just completely rips off at one point. And Quillen, who up to that point had been completely wearing the mask all the time, is just like, okay, I guess my secret's out. No sense hiding this anymore.
Yeah.
And so you can bask in my beauty.
Yeah.
Hooray. So what do you think? What you think of Quillen?
Yeah, he's just kind of your typical kind of mad scientist, someone who's been given a position of power and technology and allowed to go hog wild with whatever, whatever crazy idea he comes up with. And apparently he's come up with this transmogrification process. Yeah. And decided that it would be a good use of, that's, I guess, not necessarily torture, although from it, it sounds like, Peri was uncomfortable at the very least when she was going through the process.
Right.
that.
Yeah, he doesn't use it to get information out of anybody. He just kind of gets off on it a little bit.
Yeah, just uses it, and if it's successful, he can just kind of use it to show the people, it's like, look, if you don't cooperate, this could happen to you.
Yeah, and he's just viewing Peri and Arita, poor Peri and Arita, as just lab rats to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just a scare tactic in a way to keep the rest of the public, I guess, in line, and at the same time let him play with his toys, because he's got some part of him, some sadistic part of him that's like, I like to play with people and see what happens.
Yeah, he's all excellent. Yes.
Yeah.
Tapping his fingers back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, unlike, like a Dr. Frankenstein where it's like, let me see if I can cheat death.
Yeah.
Yeah. Type of thing, or
like Morbius or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you remember that story. All right. Anything else about the story before we move into favorite quotes?
No, actually, I had quite a bit of notes, but actually we've covered we've covered most everything.
Yeah,
so.
try to hit the highlights, in our discussion. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, but I think we covered everything too. All right. Yeah. So, do you have any favorite quotes of this story that stood out for you, that you really enjoyed?
Not that I really enjoy. No, I mean, I do kind of have to smirk at the doctor's line after the acid bath scene. Say, don't mind if I don't join you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was good. Actually, I didn't have a problem with that line. I thought it was fine. Because hey, surprise, I don't want to go in an acid bath. Go figure. I liked Peri's little calling out the doctor at the beginning of the story, where the doctor asks, "What is the matter with you?" And Peri replies, "Every time you sound confident nowadays, something terrible seems to happen."
Yeah.
The doctor goes, "Does it? What do you mean?" And then Peri says, "Well, since we left Telos, you've caused 3 electrical fires, a total power failure, and a near collision with a storm of asteroids. Not only that, you've twice managed to get yourself lost in the TARDIS corridors, wiped the memory of the flight computer, and jettisoned 3/4 of the storage hold. You even managed to burn dinner last night." Yeah. And the doctor's like, "I never said I was perfect.
I was supposed to have a cold supper."
Yeah. Well, what did he say after that? It's like something like, these accidents do happen, or something like that, to that effect. But I thought
I do like the doctor's indignation, though. He's like, well, I never said I was perfect.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's like, what's your problem?
I know you're not.
What's the big deal? So I screwed up at everything this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, you big lovable clown, you. So. I love the doctor's sass. He could be cruel sometimes, but at the same time, he's definitely got some serious sass too.
It does, yeah. Well, he's not the type to roll over. No.
Yeah, no.
Especially where Peri's involved. So another exchange between Peri and the doctor, the one we were talking about with the TARDIS manual, I liked. Peri says, "Here, a little something to stop you sighing like a steam engine." And the doctor replies, "What is it?" And the TARDIS says, "TARDIS manual. I found it in a workshop propping open a vent." Mm-hmm. And the doctor replies, "Oh, yeah. Started reading that once." And then he tosses the book on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, doctor.
Yeah. Well, it depending upon, I think I read somewhere, I don't know if it was in an actual TV story or if it was in Big Finish, but I guess with the 4th Doctor, they referenced the TARDIS manual and the fact that the manual is actually like several hundred books.
Yes.
And the one book is just like the starter. The starter book. So
yeah, maybe you should digitize that, just saying.
Yeah, maybe
it might be a little easier to handle.
Yeah, so.
Maybe with obviously an index file.
Yeah. But where's the fun in reading the instructions?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like
doing anything.
Well, like how am I supposed to get myself into dangerous situations if I read the manual? Come on, guys.
Exactly. Well, and how are we supposed to get that wonderful noise that the TARDIS makes if the doctor
Yeah.
had read the manual and knew that he left the brakes on?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. So, what's your rating for this one? I give it. I give it 8 out of 10 voting buttons, but I'm dying to know what you think of this story.
I thought I thought really hard about this, and it's not my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not. I'm not going to give it 10 out of 10. It's definitely better than some others.
Right.
So I would probably. I was kind of bouncing between like a 7-ish, so maybe 7.5.
Yes.
Pieces of Zyton 7.
Oh, nice. Nice. I see what
or
you did
units of Zyton 7.
Very, very nice. Very nice. Very apropos.
There's a lot about this story that I like. I mean, the fact that it's Sixth Doctor obviously gives it several points to begin with. Peri does bring it down. My disgust for Syl.
That costs some points too, I'm sure.
That costs it some too, but at the same time, I really like the
negative Syl points.
Yes, yeah, negative Syl points. But I do like the character of the governor. I like the traps and stuff, although they're kind of cheesy, but I do like the whole, seemingly endless tunnels and you don't know what's around the corner. And there's some funny bits too, which bump it up. I like the guys in like the little golf cart going like 5 feet and then jumping off and then jumping back on again to go another 5 feet.
Yeah, we forgot to talk about that. How slow is that little golf cart thing?
Yeah.
I mean, they could be running much faster than that thing.
Yeah, really.
So funny. Because it would just go, like, you get in, and everybody would pile into this, like, little golf cart thing, and then it would just go really slowly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that had put me at about a 7, but then it gave it the extra, like, half a point for the Doctor, 1, taking off his coat, so we get to see more of the outfit without the coat. And 2, how good Colin Baker's butt looks in those yellow pinstripe pants.
You were checking out the Colin there. I see how it is. Yeah.
As much as people complain about the outfit,
Doctor, you notice how Colin Baker wasted no time taking off that coat in that fantasy desert sequence.
Yeah. He was doing it for the ladies.
There you go. That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So 7.5 from you and 8 from me. Now, normally do we do a reverse the polarity segment as we reverse the polarity to the neutron flow?
Yes.
But because this is a classic story, I'm going to reverse the polarity to the modern era. Yep. And we're going to. So I'm going to recommend. If you enjoyed Vengeance on Varos, I recommend Bad Wolf, the 12th episode of Series 1 in 2005, written, of course, by Russell T. Davies, where we had the Ninth Doctor, Rose, and Jack finding themselves separated, waking up with temporary amnesia in various TV game shows.
Yep.
And obviously, you've got people watching and these shows, and obviously, these shows are far more deadly than they appear. You got versions of The Weakest Link, Big Brother, and What Not to Wear. And on Weakest Link and Big Brother, losing contestants are disintegrated, and on What Not to Wear, participants undergo brutal cosmetic surgery. So the Ninth Doctor escapes Big Brother with a contestant called Linda with a Y. And Jack escapes What Not to Wear. And the Doctor discovers that they're on a space station, Satellite 5, in the year 200,100. Funny how you always end on those even years.
Mhm.
The station is now under control of the Bad Wolf Corporation, which shares the same name with a set of words that are following the Doctor and Rose throughout time and space. Linda with a Y explains that 100 years ago, when the Doctor last visited in the long game, Satellite 5 stopped broadcasting and humanity became confused and lost. The three search for Rose, finding her just as she loses the final round of the weakest link and is promptly disintegrated by the android. Get it? Android.
Mhm.
The Dr., Jack, and Linda are arrested, but they escape their capture and travel to the control room on floor 500. There they meet the controller, a cybernetic human who uses the cover of a solar flare to speak directly to the Doctor without her masters overhearing. The controller uses a transmat to hide the Doctor and his companions in the games because her masters don't watch them. Which is interesting and should be a big tip-off. The solar flare ends before she can tell the Doctor who is controlling her, of course. Jack finds the TARDIS hidden in a restricted area, realizing that contest losers aren't actually disintegrated but transmatted off the station. The controller begins giving the Doctor the coordinates that the transmat leads to, knowing that her masters will hear. And the controller disappears in a transmat beam, wakes up on a spaceship where she is, of course, killed by her masters. Rose wakes up on the floor of the spaceship and is horrified to see a Dalek approaching her. The Doctor and Jack discover a signal coming from the station that is hiding something at the edge of the solar system. They cancel the signal and reveal a fleet of Dalek spaceships. The Daleks open a communication channel to the Doctor, threatening to kill Rose if he interferes. The Doctor, of course, refuses to back down and vows to rescue Rose and wipe out the Daleks.
Mm-hmm.
And which, of course, he does in the Parting of the Ways, but primarily it's Rose who wipes out those Daleks, as we find out. So, if you enjoyed Vengeance on Varos, I definitely recommend Bad Wolf. And I don't know how, Rachel, I don't know if you have a recommendation, but if you do, that'd be great if you have one.
Yeah, actually, that was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one that is not necessarily, it's kind of similar, but not quite. It's got its own twist on things. But considering the subject matter, it's kind of the irony of the story that the Vengeance replaced.
Yeah.
Called Song of the Space Whale, because my recommendation is The Beast Below.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that one. That's a good one too.
Which
with the voting,
is a space whale.
It was a space whale. That's good. Yeah, and they have voting buttons on that one.
Yes,
yeah.
you have that. You have, but in this case, it's people learn about how they're traveling in space and learn about the space whale, and then they have to vote to decide whether to forget that, they're essentially causing this animal pain,
right. so they can travel through space.
Yeah, or vote to remember, and eventually the Queen, who would be the authority figure, she has to decide whether to
free the whale
Queen
too,
and forget,
right.
or abdicate and free the whale.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. Liz 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts, not just Doctor Who, but there's all sorts of science fiction that's got very similar elements to it. So it's like, if you wanted to go outside of Who, obviously the Hunger Games would be
perfect example there.
A good example. And then there is an episode in the first season of The Orville called Majority Rule.
I'm not familiar with that one.
That is very similar, except it's more people use social media, and you vote on everything everybody does, essentially. And if you get there's some threshold of how many votes minimum you can have, and if you drop below that, you get taken away and lobotomized.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
No. That's interesting. I have to check into that.
Yeah,
that sounds interesting to me. All right, thanks for your recommendations. Those are great. We did get some feedback this week, which I want to share, and of course, someone very familiar to Rachel.
Gee, I wonder
who that could be. Yes. So we kind of get an appearance by the Five-ish fangirls this time, because Holly Mack writes in once again, of this time, of course, about Vengeance on Varos. She goes, "Hello, Charles and Rachel." So Rachel gets a shout out, of course. "What a great episode. I was chuckling when Peri brought the Doctor the TARDIS manual when he was moping. At least he looked in it and found out that what he needed to make repairs. The story really holds up today with how much social media is affecting us, and it can be found pretty much everywhere. Syl is still as devious as I remember him. Syl having a Cassandra-like moment near the end, wanting to be watered by his lackeys to look his best." Yeah, I noticed that too. The ending with the end of the executions and the public being free and what they were going to do was a nice touch. Here's hoping that they go in the right direction and don't reintroduce those pastimes. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. So thank you once again, Holly. And it was great that you got to be a part of Rachel's episode here on Next Up Everywhere. Always great to hear from you. And we also got another bit of feedback on Vengeance on Varos from David K. Proctor, one of our recurring emailers. And David writes in, he goes, "Budget cuts were mounting by this point. I had never seen this pair of episodes. I liked the story okay. It was basically a new version of gladiatorial sports." That was something what we discussed. Interesting concept. It is perhaps where we're heading, with corporations holding more power than governments. Yes, the rich rule. I'm blanking on the actual term for it. There is a term for it. I'm blanking on that at the moment. Kind of like an oligarchy. Y'all have discussed in the past how mishandled the Sixth Doctor's personality was, so I won't beat that up too much. Peri's naivete gets a bit much. Yeah, that's one thing Rachel obviously pointed out. "I can't believe you would do this. You're just as bad as everyone else." Of course they are. You're in an alien culture. Why is it so hard for you to believe that they would act differently than you expect or hope? "I like the message that fair trade will make things better. I hope that fairness in everything can make things better. I give this 6.5 slimy little aliens." I see what you did there. So 6.5 Sils. By the way, I could not help but smile at the end and hope this is in your reverse the polarity, the end of the world. And obviously because of the Cassandra reference that we did, and that Holly pointed out. The second Christopher Eccleston story, of course. So reminded me of Cassandra when she kept telling everyone, moisturize me. So thank you as always, David K. Proctor. So thank you, David. Always great to hear from you as well. And if you want to be like Holly and you want to be like David, and please do, write to us at Next Stop Everywhere, at Next Stop SMG on Twitter, at Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or, of course, Next Stop Everywhere SMG at gmail.com. That's Next Stop Everywhere SMG for Southgate Media Group at gmail.com. Or you can reach us on the Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. Now, Rachel, where can they find you on the interwebs? I'm presuming, of course, the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, right?
Yes. That's a good place to start.
Excellent.
Which is the fiveishfangirls.com. That's the easiest place to start, because that connects you to everywhere else we are. And I handle most of our social media, so odds are if you comment on a tweet or something that I'm the person you're actually interacting with.
Excellent.
And then my own personal is on Instagram and Twitter are both Beatles Blonde. So
damn good call.
Excellent. So
find me there.
Please do, and hopefully you find her a lot easier than I was finding her on Skype. So so probably
Skype is
Skype,
its own can of worms.
Yeah.
So,
Skype shakes fist.
yeah, really.
Yeah. But
the
thanks.
Shatner yell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you almost like Khan. You go Skype.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have all kinds of fun here. Next up everywhere with Skype. Needless to say, as I'm sure you do too, as well. Yeah, everybody check out the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. They've been so lovely to us here at Next Stop Everywhere. Obviously, with Holly and Rachel now appearing on the show. So please do them a solid, and they definitely get my personal recommendation because I've enjoyed their episodes as well. And check them out; they're great people, obviously.
I'm just sad that I didn't discover you sooner, because at this point you've checked off most of the Six Doctors era. So.
Well, we still have the Trial of the Time Lord season, so
Yeah.
I need to I need to bring you back for that because I think you would have some great insights on that one. So when I'm probably gonna have to line up some people so that maybe we'll cover each story of the 4 stories, but yeah, we might have to have you back for that.
Yeah.
If you're interested,
you've already covered my favorites, or my favorites.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and obviously, but I'm guessing that you have 1 or 2 thoughts about the Trial of the Time Lord.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll have to lure you back in. Yes.
No, that's not a problem.
Yes. So
just dangle the rainbow coat in front of me.
or take that coat off, and so you can check out Colin Baker's rear end.
Yes.
Yeah. Me, of course, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog at Geeky Things. Wait for it.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Step Everywhere, including Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, and more. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news. News of my other podcasts that I do for Southgate Media, including Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I do with Jesse Jackson, my regular co-host here on Next Stop Everywhere, where we're talking about the DC Universe series Titans, and of course we'll talk about Doom Patrol Season 2 when that comes back. They've been a lot of fun. The shows have been a lot of fun, and we've been having a ball on Titan Talk, so please check us out there, or you can reach me on Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we have a ball talking all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and of course, Zan, you've heard, so a lot of you have heard here on Next Stop Everywhere, and she'll be coming back at some point in the near future to talk about Terror of the Autons, one of her favorite stories, and the big one, of course, because that introduces the Master on Doctor Who. So that's a big one to talk about. So, Rachel, I had a ball. I hope you had fun.
I did.
This is your first time here at Next Stop Everywhere, and I hope it won't be your last because you've been so wonderful to talk to.
Oh, thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah. And so thank you, Holly, for kind of pointing Rachel our way. We definitely appreciate that. And hopefully you come back because I had a blast talking to you. So everybody, next time on Next Stop Everywhere, please come back because Jesse Jackson, my regular co-host, my partner in time, is going to be back. And we're going to talk about 1 Mile Down, which is the CD I'm holding in my hot little hands right here, which features, of course, once again, David Tennant and Catherine Tate as the 10th Doctor, and Donna Noble for Big Finish, and the return of the Jadoon. So more Jadoon platoon upon the moon for everyone to enjoy. This is the second audio from the Doctor Who, the 10th Doctor Adventures, Volume 3 set. From Big Finish Productions. So if you want to download the episode, you can obviously go to bigfinish.com. Or if you're like me, you can get your stuff from WhoNorthAmerica.com. That's my regular supplier of Doctor Who goodness.
My home away from home.
Exactly. So everybody, please come on back for 1 Mile Down. And thank you again, Rachel, for filling in. And I thought you did a great job.
Thanks.
And everybody come on back. 1 Mile Down. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll see you next time right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.